Okay, perfect. You can start, John.
Okay, welcome everybody to the LACin Talks. Anybody who's new to this network, the Latin America and Caribbean Investment Network is a nonprofit. Our mission is to promote economic and social development and the integration of regional economic development across Latin American and Caribbean countries. We have the representation. We have people representing many different countries, islands across the region, and we seek engagement between all of the different stakeholders who are willing to formalize alliances and organize on the cooperation between the different regional economic development agencies. Today's talk is very interesting. It's from Nikola Jokanović. He's a PhD student in Latin American Studies at the Department of Political Science at the University of Hradec Králové in the Czech Republic. His research interests include energy transition and environmental policy, focused on Brazil, China, and Latin America. So he's going to give us a quick presentation today about some of his research interests. And I think the focus is going to be a lot on energy transition and some of the countries in our region. So it should be very interesting talk. After he gives his presentation, there'll be some time for some questions and answers. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat function, and then we can ask him the questions after. So with that being said, open the floor to Nikola.
Okay. So you hear me as I speak, right? Perfect. I will, I suppose because of the sound issue, because as I can say, I'm glad you can hear me at least. I will, if there's any questions later on, basically just write them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer in that sense, like as they come in chat. Now let me see how to share the screen because there's a presentation. Let's see how it's gonna work. Maybe this one. Okay, so I hope you can see it now. So I will be talking today about, it is a topic which ultimately brought me to Brazil more than a year ago, between September and November 23. And one topic which is part of my PhD dissertation and research, and something which I have been working on for the last almost 5 years to one extent or another. It's the energy transition in Brazil, and some issues, some challenges, opportunities, and everything arising from it. So without further ado, basically we'll be talking about, I'll say a few sentences, slides, and so on about, in general, about renewable energy in Brazil, about the key stakeholders when it comes to policy making. Being a political scientist, I have interest in how laws are made, how political framework is decided, and legal framework, and so on. And in this case, it's all behind the energy transition. Also, there will be a few words, slides, and so on about wind and solar energy development in the country. Also, maybe I will show you a few impressions, few answers I have received, and from the fieldwork I have done in Brazil in the period, and maybe a few dilemmas as to what accompanies the what accompanies the energy transition in this country. Well, when it comes to renewable energy, we have different sources such as solar, wind, bioethanol, biodiesel, biomass, hydrogen, often hydroelectric as well. For this purpose, I have focused on solar and wind energy, as some opinions see them as new or more recent energy sources, having in mind that hydroelectricity is present for decades now and occasionally it carries on environmental impact and can even bring about droughts which are more frequent due to climate changes. When it comes to Brazil, Plante is the most recent plan and energy transition plan in Brazil has been launched in August 24. The implementation is monitored by the National Energy Transition Forum, or FONT, in Brazilian abbreviation, Brazilian Portuguese, aims at realizing the objectives of the National Energy Transition Policy, PNTE, with key strategic axes. There's 5 of them. I have singled out some of them which are of most relevance, in my humble opinion, to the energy sources. That's expansion of renewable energy, solar, wind, biomass, and hydroelectric. Interesting enough, hydroelectric is still counted on. Also, having in mind it's still the most important source of energy in Brazil, electricity. For low carbon fuels, there's encouraging alternatives such as biofuels and green hydrogen, and there's technological innovation, encouraging research into clean technologies and smart grids. The early plans speak about 2 trillion Brazilian reals, or approximately $361 billion worth of investment in the next 10 years. Now, when it comes to plans like this and previous plans in energy transition plans in Brazil, the main stakeholders, I would say, the agencies, the actors contributing what they look like, what the content is, and how their realization proceeds, their state agencies and bodies. There's industry associations, and there's state-owned companies. With these, I primarily and Petrobras, and especially for the period before 2022, Eletrobras. Others, which have not been included in the presentation, but still are relevant, are think tanks. There's BNDES, or the Policy Bank, which is for economic and social development in Brazil, and foreign companies if there's foreign investment present. For state agencies, bodies, I would say the first one to mention is ANEEL, or the regulator, the Agency for Electric Energy. It is formally under the umbrella of Ministry of Mines and Energy, but also is a check to its power. It's like regular contact with the Brazilian Senate. It is independent in financial and administrative sense through charges paid through electricity generators and distribution companies. Also, it's organizing bills, auctions to supply electricity in the long term and fixed price contracts. This agency, the ANEEL, is in charge of credibility in institutional framework, even when auctions are cancelled on short notice. One example which came to some data was in December 2016, and it included at the time wind and solar energy. Another such body is the EP, or the Energy Research Enterprise. It's tasked mostly for planning and expansion for over the period of 10 years, the expansion of the electricity sector. It's a high-capacity bureaucracy with links to the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Also, the first reserve auction for solar power in Brazil was held in 2014. This institution is in charge of price caps, or price maximums, for the auctions. Also, these plans have occasionally been outweighed by economic crisis and response to when Brazil happens to have a recession, then some of these plans and initiatives can be cancelled. When it comes to energy companies, Eletrobras is or used to be a state-owned company which was tasked with implementing energy programs like Luz para Todos, meaning Light for All, which is a program which meant to increase the access to electric energy to broader population in Brazil, even to those who could otherwise less afford it. It used to be in control of most hydropower nuclear companies, and definitely one of the, if you just take a look, basically transmission lines in Brazil are 40% in ownership and control of Eletrobras. So it is a major power. Even I'm assuming even due to after privatization, even though due to privatization some social and political activities have been taken away from the company. When it comes to Petrobras, here we have less emphasis on renewable energy. We have there's refocus on upstream oil and gas. This company was one of the most significant aid recipients from BNDES as of 2019, approximately $13 billion US. Similar loans led to give me a second. Led to debt accumulation, and at the time after the appearance of Lava Jato scandal or the car wash, it led to the attempts to restructure the company led to focusing on just restructuring the debt, reducing the corporate debt, which in turn meant focusing solely, at least in the earliest period, on oil and gas activities. Although I have found the information that they have paid some attention to the wind energy, mostly the offshore wind, as we will see later on. As of 2019, its portfolio remained about 700 megawatt of energy, and mostly wind, as far as I know. When it comes to industry associations for wind and solar, we have AB Eólica, AB Solar, and ABGD. AB Eólica is for the wind energy, existing since 2002. For AB Solar, has been since 2013, and for distributed generation, or ABGD, they exist since 2015, basically representing the interest of their members and attempting to impact the policy making and to ensure, basically, to represent their members. In this sense, it's private companies with knowledge, with expertise, and so on, in discussions with the lawmakers in Brazil. Here's some examples, basically, as to what it looks like. Basically, there's a symbol of wind and solar energy. The solar energy is in Sao Paulo State, and as of 2020. And the wind energy is Lagoa dos Ventos. Now, this has been, in preparing the presentation, I have also, prior to Brazil, I have attended 2 months research stay in Vienna, in Austria. And the early discussions, the early forums and so on, not only this presentation, but also the research I do, have been shaped by my experience, by the exchange I had in Austria, and it received the insights, the further improvement, and most likely the most important field work upon arriving in Brazil. In this sense, the wind energy, as of 2015, was the fastest growing energy source in the country. And the data I have for wind energy is 6.9% of the energy mix. As of 2017, also already then it reached more than 11 gigawatts of installed capacity. On the other hand, in the earliest period, the solar energy was not nearly as successful due to expensive components, due to an array of reasons. As of 2017, it was only 2% of generation and all measurable in less than a gigawatt of energy. However, in the previous, based on my data I have, maybe 4, 5, 6 years, it became much more massive. And the installed capacity as of last year is 14.3 gigawatts of solar energy. As we will see, it's primarily distributed generation, which is much more affordable or can actually be deployed in households and small consumers. This is one map which roughly, I don't know how visible it is, but this is the approximate map of installations for hydro, for thermoelectric, for main energy sources in Brazil, just for orientation's sake. And it's also very important, as we will see later on, the transmission lines and connection of basically the transmission grid in Brazil includes the northeast, the southeast, southern parts of Brazil. Most of the northern Brazil and western parts towards Peru and Brazilian neighbors in the west is not included in the transmission grid, and it represents one of the main obstacles and challenges the country is facing. We'll get to it in more detail a little later. Now here is the data from the field work. Basically, what are the obstacles to more adoption of renewable energy? Now I have marked these answers with E, G, and R. E representing entrepreneur as the respondent, G representing a government employee, which could be either a local government, can be local government, or could be an employee of international organizations. For in this case, it was a local government employee with knowledge and expertise when it comes to renewable energy. And R is a researcher and university teacher and a think tank researcher. Basically, we have a lack of strategic planning. We have distribution infrastructure, whether it's exposed instead of putting underground, and the risks it obviously carries. The tax burden is making imports much more feasible than exports, meaning that it's much more doable to import foreign renewable energy solutions into Brazil than to produce domestically and to export. This is a common point for the two interviews. For the third one, basically, as we have already seen, the infrastructure for energy transmission, it does not include northern Brazil and even parts of northeast. There occasionally can be different political will or different degrees of political will, which can even obstruct or halt or slow down the policy implementations. And some political issues can get more advantage or preference. As for the researcher, basically it echoes the one from the government, saying that not all the infrastructure does not cover all the territory. The mindset in operators is changed and slightly changing and reducing the resistance which used to exist to wind and solar energy due to subsidies, due to growing capacity, more success, and so on. But okay, it seems to me, my impression based on the interviews, that some of this old mindset still exists. And the second point, which I would like to raise is, and there have been several, but for the purpose and for the shortness of the presentation, I have opted to stick to these two, basically, the obstacles to greater adoption and to the role of AB Eolica, AB Solar, and ABGD. From the entrepreneur point of view, there are constant dialogues for the wind and for the solar from Solar with government officials. When it comes to Minas Gerais, the incentivization for solar energy has been better than in other Brazilian states. Specifically when it comes to the ICMS tax, which has been waived for up to 5 megawatts of installed capacity versus 1 megawatt of capacity, which is the threshold in some other Brazilian states. When it comes to the government employee, the AB Eolica data has not been provided. But the impression on AB Solar and ABGD is that they're very strong, very influential, can raise big issues or modify consensus, such as when it comes to taxation initiatives, those two, they were stopped or they were reformulated afterwards. And they have also technical capacity and knowledge to contribute to the policy-making efforts. When it comes to the researcher had more data prior to 2016. I'm guessing she had a reorientation in her later research. However, in this period, AB Solar was less organized, less effective in lobbying, especially since distributed generation was not in the pro-info program, like for development of renewable energy sources. At the same time, AB Eolica was even then very influential, very strong, with a booming sector which was creating jobs and perspective and so on, even during recessions. And this fact and their capability basically allowed contacts with the Ministry of Mines and Energy, with TANEL, and even with Congress people. Some dilemmas which would be here worth mentioning. One which I came across was, again, discussion of inexpensive imports or domestic production. One of the interviews actually said that, I'm supposed this is the data as of autumn 2023, Brazil only has two domestic producers of renewable energy, capable of delivering like recognizable brands, one of them being the state of Sao Paulo. Most of the others of needs for solar energy technology is actually met from the imports. And I have personally, one of the interviews was actually with a representative of Huawei technology in Brazil during my stay in Brazil. When it comes to, so basically it's a discussion whether, especially in the early period, this technology was very expensive, and also there was no technology to process to turn from silicon from quartz into silicon, which is needed for the solar panels. When it comes to second dilemma, there's the period of Jair Bolsonaro as the president of Brazil, which was the period, to put it shortly, when while there was development of renewable energy, of solar and wind, and solar energy began to boom. My impression, based on the literature reading, and was it was kind of detached. There was an attempt to detach it from the climate context, like climate change context, meaning as to seen as a kind of technological development in the country. So it was. I'll probably skip it in a new version, but it's the period also when we have development of solar energy and wind, We also have the very strong influence which exists in the country regarding the agricultural sector and widespread deforestation efforts in the Amazon. But for this, it nevertheless meant a continuation of growth and of expansion of solar energy, which continues to this day. Also, there is, as we have seen and confirmed, basically transmission lines represent a significant challenge, and also the fact that in some cases more polluting energy sources are replaced with natural gas, so not really wind and solar. This is all in the context of the third dilemma, which means decarbonizing energy mix, which is already greatly decarbonized. So these three dilemmas, based on the sources I could come across, represent what it will look like, what it looks now, what it might look like in the future. As to, again, there's the capability of producing domestic, of having domestic capacities and exporting technology to a greater extent. Might also mean that Brazil can rely more not on the imported one technology, but to have its own production at home. So I think, I try to keep it short, but then it was even short. So right now I'm open to questions.
So Nikola, it looks like, I know you can't hear us, but it looks like there's some questions in the chat. I don't know if he can, I don't think he's hearing me, but can you see the question?
Let me see the...
So there's some interesting questions in the chat.
The first question you see here, is it feasible for island nations without a robust manufacturing sector to transition to renewable energy solutions? Can island or small countries invest in renewable energy transition strategy that includes local manufacturing or a majority of the energy infrastructure or technology required? I think Brazil is a very good example of how distributed generation can, it's something which can be in households, basically in schools, in homes, and so on. I wouldn't use the word democratic, but I would say this kind of electricity production is very available and something which contributed ultimately to the growth. My understanding and my vision is that it probably could, with some adjustments, be also useful for island nations, and especially to serve towards decarbonizing their energy mix in that sense. Of course, it would be obviously for households, and if the natural conditions allow it, like for wind and so on, inland, on land and offshore, definitely it would be possible for a combination of wind solar to contribute to the decarbonization of energy mix, even in the island nations. Especially since having in mind the climate changes and what is expected to be a rising sea level, my understanding is that island nations will be among the most interested in contributing to the fight against climate change. The population size of GDP thresholds before a nation can invest in renewable energy transition. This data I don't have. And I tend to view it more into having sufficient technological basis and industrial basis, especially as we have seen for solar energy. It is, some solutions, some technical solutions can be imported or is pre-made and just installed, or can be developed at home. It is very important for solar panels to have the production capacity to be produced basically from quartz. If these reserves exist, it's not sufficient, as we have seen in Brazilian example, but it also needs to be processed and to have domestic energy. So I would rather direct it to the industrial base, industrial capacity in the country, rather than the population. The next question, hydrogen. What role will it play in Brazil and in Latin America? While I haven't covered hydrogen in the very detail in this presentation and in my research so far, I see it primarily as a source of energy which can be deployed for transportation, can be deployed with some developments, and especially if the country is strong enough to have subsidies and to make it more affordable and so on, as a substitute to petrol, to vehicles using the derivatives of oil and so on, and natural gas. Even though it's, I would say it's needed for now. It's I would say still economically high. I would say I've seen when I was staying in Norway doing the research related to China, I have seen the attempts made in Norway, and I'm aware of attempts in Germany, which are we're speaking about higher GDP and so on in these countries, so they can probably bear the cost of substituting some of their energy with hydrogen. So while there is future in it, and I definitely see it as becoming more and more massive, at this point the costs are, how bioenergy and biofuels will and can integrate to electrify transports. If the question is about bioethanol or biodiesel, I don't know if this is what we mean about, but for bioenergy and for biofuels, I'm aware of a long tradition in Brazil of deploying bioethanol and biodiesel when it comes to fuels and mixing up with ethanol and diesel. I would say there is, well, it is possible to have, and I would expect to have some source of it basically from sugarcane deployed and present in the market as a way of reducing the CO2 emissions. If there is some kind of checks and balances are needed for this energy source, because these are agricultural products, and relying too much on this could cause market destabilization, or maybe even rising lead to price increase when it comes to sugar. So in this sense, I would rather say that it will remain present in the market, especially if it's popularized. But I would give more attention to other energy sources rather than combination with bioethanol. When it comes to how might the energy transition influence Latin America's dependence on China and other global players in the energy sector, and risks of production chain concentration. It all depends on the level of subsidies and on the successful development of indigenous. When I say indigenous, I mean domestic production, not only in Brazil, in all Latin American and Caribbean countries, and whether they will, how successful actually they will develop their own indigenous producers, and what for each of these countries would mean to have their own domestic production, whether it's for hydrogen, whether it's for maybe about diesel, maybe it's to wind and solar energy, and in general the other renewable energy sources. I would say this is also a strong sector, a strong presence of domestic players in these countries, energy affairs and so on, could also be the key towards reducing the dependence or the need to import foreign goods. In this sense, while China has, there's the economy of scale, there's the capability of producing immense quantities of solar technology, solar solutions, and to export it worldwide. I am guessing that it can also it could also serve to kind of I don't have enough information as to would be possible to kind of knowledge transfer. Basically, if this technology is Chinese, if it's possible to have kind of knowledge transfer and to have these capacities developed in each of the countries, not only Brazil. But there is political will needed to it. There is if the political interest prevails in each of the countries, it is doable and it can be developed either with not only in cooperation with China, but also Europe, United States, or other international players when it comes to this technology. I would. There could also be the matter of national security and the need to maybe to develop more of these technologies domestically. This is another story, and this is basically the fact of if these producers they have technology, they create jobs, if they have investments and lead to economic growth, then they will will contribute to domestic economy immensely.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. And I believe Alan will be sharing the presentation and the video with all the group. If there's any additional questions, we could also share Nikola's contact information so that we could reach out directly to him with additional questions. But I want to close by thanking everybody for participating in this talk. Thanking Nikola for his presentation, and look forward to the next presentation that we make in the near future. Alan, I don't know if you want to say any closing remarks.
I would like to say thank you for Nikola. He can't hear us, but I'll send him a message after here. But thank you very much, Nikola, for your research, your work. It's very important to have you as an international observer of the network. So once again, thank you for this nice edition of LACin Talks. Also, John, thank you for your presentation and for hosting us. I would like to share that we will do annual meeting at the second semester, and we will also launch LACin Hub on the next month. So stay tuned for news and to join LACin and to participate in next activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks, everybody, and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.